There was a day when everything changed. Maybe you remember it exactly. The last call that went unanswered. The last message that was read but never replied to. The last holiday that came and went without a word. Or maybe there wasn't one clear moment. Maybe it was a slow fading, a gradual cooling, until one day you realized that the silence had become permanent. Your adult child has gone no contact with you, not just distant, not just busy, not just going through something. Gone, deliberately, intentionally, completely gone. And if you are sitting with that right now, if you are carrying the weight of that silence today, I want you to know something before we go any further. What you are feeling is not weakness. It is not self-pity. It is the natural, human response to one of the most painful things a parent can experience: the loss of a child who is still alive, the grief of a relationship that exists, that must exist somewhere, but that you cannot reach. You are not alone in this. That is not a platitude. It is a statistical fact. According to research cited across multiple studies, approximately 1 in 4 adults is currently estranged from at least one family member. That number has been growing steadily for over a decade. Therapists who work with families say they have never been busier, and the parents who come to them, parents exactly like you, all describe the same thing: the shock, the confusion, the desperate searching question, what did I do? Today, we are going to sit with that question honestly, not to assign blame, not to tell you that everything is your fault, because it isn't, not entirely, and not to tell you that everything is your child's fault, because that won't help you, and it isn't entirely true either. But to understand as clearly and as honestly as we can what is actually happening, and what, if anything, you can do about it. Welcome to Family Bonds After 60. Something has changed in the world. Let me say one more thing before we go further. I know that some of you listening to this are not sure whether what your adult child is doing is justified or not, and I want to say clearly, I am not here to decide that for you. The question of whether your child's estrangement is fair or proportionate or based on an accurate picture of who you are, those are real questions and they deserve serious thought. But today, that is not the question that will help you most. The question that will help you most is, what can I do from here? That is what we are going to focus on. Before we talk about your specific situation, I want to give you some context that I think is genuinely important. Because what is happening in your family is not happening in a vacuum. It is happening inside a much larger cultural shift. A shift that has changed the landscape of family relationships in ways that none of us fully anticipated. A generation ago, going no contact with your parents was almost unthinkable. It happened, of course. Families have always had their fractures, but it was rare. It was private. It was not something you talked about at dinner parties or posted about on social media. That has changed completely. Today, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit are full of content about toxic families, boundaries, and no contact. There are hashtags with millions of posts. There are entire communities built around the decision to walk away from family. And crucially, there are people online cheering those decisions on, validating them, celebrating them, telling the person who is considering cutting off their parents, you deserve better. You are allowed to protect yourself. Your mental health comes first. I am not here to say that message is entirely wrong. There are situations, real ones, serious ones, where the healthiest thing a person can do is create distance from a family that has genuinely harmed them. There are parents who have been genuinely abusive, genuinely neglectful, genuinely harmful. Those situations are real, and in those situations, distance may be necessary. But the research also shows that many estrangements happen in families where the harm was not so clear-cut, where the parent was imperfect but not malicious, where the wounds were real but not intentional. And in those cases, which are the majority of cases, the question of whether the estrangement is permanent is still very much open. But here is what the data also shows. Research by Dr. Anna Udin, a clinical psychologist who has studied this extensively, reveals something important. The reasons adult children give for going no contact and the reasons their parents believe caused the estrangement are often dramatically different. Parents tend to say, "I don't know what happened. Our family had normal issues." Adult children tend to say, "There was a pattern of behavior that I tried to address for years before I finally stepped back." That gap between what parents perceive and what adult children experience is the heart of almost every estrangement. And understanding it, really sitting with it, is the first step toward anything changing. What the research actually says. There is a difference between what is being said about estrangement on social media and what the research actually shows. And I think you deserve to know the research. Dr. Uden's work, drawing on multiple studies, identifies 3 core reasons adult children give for estrangement. The first is abuse, either physical, emotional, or psychological. The second is what researchers call poor parenting, which includes emotional unavailability, control, criticism, and failure to acknowledge the child's experience. And the third is betrayal, a specific incident or pattern of behavior that broke trust in a way that felt irreparable. What is important to understand is that these 3 reasons share a common thread. Beneath all of them, researchers consistently find the same thing: a history of emotional disconnection, not necessarily dramatic conflict, not necessarily cruelty, often just a sustained pattern of the child not feeling truly seen, truly heard, truly safe to be themselves in the relationship. That pattern may have begun when the child was very young. It may have been invisible to you at the time. And I say that not as an accusation, but as a fact about how these things work. Children are extraordinarily good at hiding how they feel when they sense that the environment is not safe for those feelings. A child who learns early that expressing hurt leads to dismissal or defensiveness or escalation will simply stop expressing it, not because they stopped feeling it, because they learned it wasn't safe to show it. Children often do not say what they are feeling, especially in families where saying hard things doesn't feel safe. They absorb, they adapt, they carry things quietly for years. And then, in adulthood, when they finally have the language and the distance and the permission to name what they experienced, it can come out in ways that feel sudden to the parent but have actually been building for a very long time. There is something else the research shows that I want to name, because it is both painful and important. Studies consistently find that parents and adult children remember the same childhood very differently, not because one of them is lying, but because a child and a parent experience the same events from fundamentally different positions. What felt to you like a normal amount of discipline may have felt to your child like criticism they couldn't escape. What felt to you like involvement may have felt to them like control. What you experienced as love may not have landed as love. That is not a verdict on your intentions. It is just the reality of how humans experience the same moments differently. None of this means you caused everything. It does not mean your adult child's perception is the complete truth. It means there is more to understand than you may currently be able to see. What you are carrying. Before we talk about what to do, I want to spend a moment on you, because you are carrying something that is genuinely hard to carry, and the world does not always make it easy. When a parent loses a child to death, there is a framework for that grief. There are rituals, communities, language, support. But when a parent loses a child to estrangement, when their child is alive, possibly nearby, possibly visible on social media, there is almost no framework for that at all. The grief has no name. The loss has no ceremony. And it is very hard to talk about because it comes with a layer of shame that death does not. Because somewhere underneath the pain, there is a voice that says, if my child cut me off, it must mean I failed. I want to speak directly to that voice for a moment. You may have made mistakes. Most parents do. You may have said things you shouldn't have, or missed things you should have caught, or handled moments in ways that, looking back, you would handle differently now. That is what it means to be a human parent. But the shame that tells you this is entirely your fault, that you are a bad parent, that you deserve to be cut off, that shame is not a reliable narrator. It is not giving you the full picture, and it is not helping you. What helps is honesty, not self-punishment, not defensiveness, just the quiet, clear-eyed willingness to look at what happened without needing it to mean something catastrophic about who you are. Dr. Joshua Coleman, a psychologist who has spent decades working with estranged families, says something that I think every parent in this situation needs to hear. He says, parents do the best they can, even when that best ends up being insufficient, and they deserve compassion, including from themselves. That is not an excuse. It is a foundation. You cannot do the work of repair from a place of shame. You can only do it from a place of honest, grounded self-awareness. That is the internal work that makes everything else possible. And it begins now. Step 1. Resist the urge to defend. Get curious instead. This is the hardest step, and it is the one that most parents get wrong. Not because they are bad parents, but because the instinct to defend yourself when you feel accused is one of the most natural human responses there is. When your adult child tells you, or signals, through their silence, that something you did hurt them, the first impulse is to explain, to correct the record, to tell your side, to point out what they are getting wrong, or what they are forgetting, or how much you sacrificed, or how hard you tried. That impulse, however understandable, will close the door every time. Because your adult child is not looking for a debate. They are not submitting a legal case that requires rebuttal. They are, in their own way, trying to tell you something about their experience. And when you respond to that experience with a defense, what they hear is not your explanation. What they hear is, my pain doesn't matter to you. You are still not seeing me. Nothing has changed. Curiosity opens a door that defensiveness closes. When you respond to their experience, even an experience you believe is inaccurate, with genuine questions rather than corrections, something shifts. You are no longer two people fighting over who is right. You are one person trying to understand another. What does curiosity sound like in practice? It sounds like, I didn't realize you experienced it that way. Can you help me understand more? It sounds like, I hear you saying that felt hurtful. I want to understand specifically what I did. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. But, I want to hear what this was like for you, even if it is uncomfortable for me to hear it. Step 2. Don't rush the reconnection. One of the most common mistakes parents make after estrangement is moving too fast. The pain of the silence is so acute, the desire to fix it so urgent, that they reach out in ways that feel to the adult child like pressure rather than invitation. A long letter explaining everything, a series of messages with no response, a phone call to a mutual relative asking them to intervene, a birthday card that says I miss you and I don't understand what I did wrong. All of these come from love. None of them help because your adult child is not in the same place you are. They did not arrive at no contact overnight. They thought about it, probably for a long time. They weighed it against the pain of the relationship. They decided, at least for now, that distance felt safer than contact. And when you push urgently for reconnection, you are confirming one of their core fears about the relationship, that your needs will always come before their well-being. The pace of reconnection has to be theirs, not yours. That is not surrender. It is wisdom. It is choosing the long game over the short one. This is one of the most counterintuitive things about estrangement repair. The less pressure you apply, the more likely connection becomes. The more you let go of the outcome, the more you create the conditions for a different outcome to emerge. It feels backwards, but it works. Because what your adult child needs to believe, before they can consider reopening the door, is that opening it will not immediately put them back in the position they left. Step 3. Make contact small, clean, and without expectation. When the time feels right to reach out, and you will know when that is, because it will feel less like urgency and more like genuine readiness. The message you send matters enormously. Not a long letter, not a list of everything you want to address, not an explanation, a defense, or an expression of how much pain you are in. Just something small, something that says, I am thinking of you. I love you. I am not asking for anything right now. I just wanted you to know I am here. And then, this is the hard part. You send it and you let it go. You do not follow up if there is no response. You do not interpret the silence as confirmation of the worst. You simply make the gesture and release the outcome. That kind of small, clean, expectation-free contact is the only kind that can land without increasing the distance. Everything else adds weight to a door that is already hard to open. Think about it from the other side. Your adult child has been living with the weight of this decision. They have been wondering, in their own way, whether things could ever be different. When they receive a message that is small, warm, and asks for nothing, a message that doesn't carry the familiar pressure they stepped back from, something can shift, not immediately, but the seed is planted, and seeds need time. Step 4. Apologize without conditions. If there is something specific that you know, or suspect, caused harm, and if you have the opportunity to acknowledge it, the way you apologize matters more than you may realize. There is a kind of apology that sounds like an apology but isn't one. I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry, but you have to understand that I was going through a very hard time. Each of these takes the responsibility that an apology offers and quietly hands it back. A real apology sounds different. It sounds like, I have been thinking about what you said, and I believe you. What I did hurt you, and you deserved better from me. I am sorry. No buts, no context, no reciprocal grievances. Just the acknowledgement, the accountability, and the care. That kind of apology is rare, and it is one of the most powerful things a parent can offer an estranged adult child. Not because it guarantees reconciliation, it doesn't, but because it tells the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the only thing that can begin to rebuild what silence has taken. One more thing about apologies. They do not have to be delivered in person or over the phone or even received to matter. Sometimes writing the apology, even if you never send it, begins to shift something internally. It moves the words from your chest to the page, and from the page, it becomes possible to look at them clearly, to ask, is this true? Is this honest? Is this the apology they actually need, or the one that makes me feel better? Step 5. Keep the door open and build a life while you wait. This last step is the one that requires the most patience, and possibly the most courage. You may reach out, you may apologize, you may do everything right, and they may not respond, not immediately, not for months, maybe not for years. That is a real possibility, and I want to name it honestly, because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve false reassurance. But here is what is also true. People change, circumstances change. The adult child who felt they needed distance at 30 may feel differently at 35 or 40. The arrival of their own children, the loss of someone they love, a shift in their own therapy or understanding, any of these things can open a door that seemed permanently closed. What determines whether you are there when that door opens is not whether you kept sending messages, it is whether you kept yourself whole. Whether you built a life that is not organized around waiting, whether you stayed curious, stayed warm, stayed open, not from desperation, but from genuine love that doesn't require a response to remain real. Marie Morin, a therapist who specializes in family estrangement, describes working with parents in exactly this situation. She says the ones who eventually reconnect with their estranged adult children are almost never the ones who pushed the hardest. They are the ones who did their own work, who got honest about their patterns, who learned to hold their love without needing it to be received in a particular way. She describes one mother whose daughters had gone completely no contact. The pain was devastating. But over time, as they worked together, this mother began to rebuild her sense of self through her friendships, her community, her own creative life. She stopped allowing her daughter's absence to define her worth. She did not get her daughters back immediately, but she got herself back. And that, she says, made everything else possible. That is what keeping the door open looks like. Not checking their social media, not asking mutual relatives for updates, not carrying the estrangement as the central story of your life, but staying quietly, genuinely, unconditionally available as a person who has grown, who has reflected, who is ready to be in a different kind of relationship whenever the other person is ready too. The silence may be with you for a while, perhaps a long while. And in that silence, the question is not whether they will come back. The question is who you are becoming while you wait. We covered a lot today. We talked about why no contact is happening across a whole generation, and why it is not simply a trend, but a response to something real. We talked about what the research actually shows about the causes of estrangement. We sat with the grief and the shame that parents carry. And we talked about 5 specific things you can do, not to force a result, but to create the conditions for something better to become possible. You cannot control whether your adult child comes back. You cannot make that happen through effort or love or apology alone. But you can control who you become in the waiting. You can do the honest work. You can keep the door genuinely open. You can stay whole. And if they ever do come back, whenever that is, however that looks, you will be ready. This has been Family Bonds After 60. Take care of yourself. Be patient with yourself. And remember, the love that stays even in silence, that is not nothing. That is everything.